Saving steel, boosting brains, and exposing greed. Welcome to Mark and Pete, two blokes with half an opinion, and we've got three wonderful, fascinating stories coming up, exposing what's going on this week. And here is our first thought.
Nerves of steel. An iron political will has enormous appeal, unless it rapidly disintegrates to rust. And without strength and nerves of steel, you'll never forge a bond of trust. Well, I must say that Parliament has been recalled in the United Kingdom to sit and pass an emergency law aimed at saving British Steel's Scunthorpe plant. Now, the fact of the matter is, Sir Keir Starmer said the legislation would allow ministers to take control of the Lincolnshire site. And this, essentially, is to stop Chinese owners from coming in from closing its blast furnaces. Well, Mr. Pete, I ask you, this is a really serious subject, but I will ask the obvious question. Is this just a piece of legislation that's far too late?
Oh, Mr. Mark, yes, it's too late in that it's allowed a crisis to develop. The closing of Port Talbot Steelworks was a step in the wrong direction. Here, this is now the final steelworks that's able to produce steel from the raw ingredients and in Britain, and it's perhaps, is ridiculous the right word? It's certainly not a wise thing to do to not have a steel industry. What are you going to make your weapons from if you go to war? But it's more basic than that. How are you going to function as a society if a bad actor tries to cut off your supply of steel? For whatever reason, could be purely economic reasons, doesn't need to be a war.
Yeah.
Well, you need to insure against that. So we should never have got to this point. So is it too late? Well, I think it may be that it's just in time.
Well, I think it is. But here's my point. Last year, the Labour government, who won the general election, made some very bold claims, one of which was to build homes. Now, it may, unless we're all going to be living in straw huts, possibly, but I doubt it. The fact of the matter is, you need steel. So why didn't they actually go through a policy of change then and make it clear that they were going to go to an opening the door of a full nationalisation of steel? Now, that didn't have to be permanent. I think, as we were talking offline, it's possible that what they could have done is that during the term of the Labour government, they would nationalise steel. Now, to me, they should have anticipated this rather than leaving it as an emergency. It was blatantly obvious right from the start that these sort of things, these measures should have been put in place. The other thing as well, and I come back to this, steel making is such an essential part of the future of this country, and in fact for any industrial nation. But it also is something that if you're going to close any business, not only do you lose the plant, because to actually rebuild a plant of that nature, any kind of steelworks, takes billions of pounds to set up. It takes years to build, and worse still, you would have lost the skills and the jobs and that investment. Now, that's something that is harder, in my opinion, to replace than just simple bricks, mortar, and ironically steel. So here's the thing. I really do worry about this government being able to manage this particular process. Now, we know that the Chinese company Yingyi, I think is that how you say Yingyi?
I think it's a Jingyi.
Now, they bought British Steel in 2020. And it is invested over 1.2 billion in the company to maintain operations. However, it has stated that it's suffering losses of around £700,000 a day. So I'm going to put the other argument, which I know is not necessarily playing to the Chinese storyline, but I can understand the concerns from their side. If they were to withdraw, they're doing it for economic reasons as well, because at the moment the viability of steel in this country hasn't proven to be particularly good. But come back to the economic needs and the securing of our future, this government needs to recognize that this is foundational. We think of things like education, national health, military defense, etc. But surely something like a steel industry is one of those crucial industries that you cannot lose. So I don't understand why it's not sort of built into the foundation or the fabric of our policy making.
Yeah, yes. No, you're right. And there's other major industries, like there's no car industry to speak of in Britain.
Yeah,
We do have some car manufacturers, but not a mass car manufacturer, which is would be a could and should be a really important part of our industry. And when it comes to, there is, God forbid, a war, you need that sort of industry in order
yeah,
to supply your vehicles. So this is a fundamental problem with concentrated on globalism in the sort of the New World Order, or globalism has been in place since the early 80s, hasn't it? Really, I guess was when it really got underway. Um, and it doesn't work because nation states are the way that people are governed, the way they organize themselves. So you can't have the industry and companies operating in a different way. You need to have the companies serving the people and not the other way around.
yeah.
And over in the United States, we see Trump, and there are other countries whose leaders are seeing it, like Millet. They're seeing that you need to get back to the being a properly run nation state which understands the needs of that state and the people in it. Britain needs to get there, but we need new leadership.
Yeah.
And Mark and Pete, we've said, no, we'll give this Labour Party a chance. Well, I think they've had it.
Well,
That's your lot.
this is true. And just to close out this subject, now a Save Scunthorpe Steel campaign has taken place in recent times. And in fact, as we already know, in recent footballing season, the Scunthorpe United's football match, which was against Spennymoor Town, that was actually at half time really sort of hijacked by a parade of protests. Now, the irony is that the football club is nicknamed the Iron as a reference to the town's connection to the steel industry. I wonder
Yeah.
how many more protests will take place. Well, listeners,
Mm.
we would love to hear from you on that. We move on to another subject. Yes, this is our second subject, and this is about brain food.
Mm.
Feeding the brain stimulates much gain when your cognitive skills are taught, unless the strain causes great pain as you chew on food for thought. Yes, now, choline. How many people have heard the name? Well, it's an underappreciated nutrient that is vital for your brains, folks. Yes, it's a compound that's been linked to improved cognitive performance and reduced anxiety. But are you, Mr. Pete, getting enough of it? And have you heard of it before?
Mm. Well, maybe I'm not getting enough of it because no, I hadn't heard of it. And I tend to read about such things. You would have expected me to have known about it. No, I didn't know about it. And of course, the recent studies on it show that it's one of those small nutrients that you need to ensure you have in order to function well, for your brain to function well. So that's interesting. I mean, I was aware, for example, of selenium, which is an essential nutrient for the brain, and you can get. You can get it in things like walnuts and things. Choline, I hadn't heard of, and these recent studies show not just that it's important, but it's actually can reduce the risk of declining faculties
Yes.
in your brain,
That's
doesn't it? I mean,
Alzheimer's, high attention deficit, hyperactivity disorders,
mm.
many other different things.
Yes, and it's interesting when you're looking at the brain. When people talk about mental health and mental ability and acuity, they often talk about a balance of the different chemicals in there. But what do they mean of that? Well, I suspect, because I'm so suspicious of such things, they don't always know. But one of the main things is it's not so much when they're talking about a balance. It's not a balance as in um, you've got uh, uh, you've got to even out different types of chemicals. No, it's balance in that trying to get the right
Oh,
amount.
yes.
That sort of idea, getting a precise amount. It's not really balance; it's more precision. And if you've got what you need is the right amount in order for the brain to function. So this, I was looking this up since it's in the news now, this choline, and it's got you got to have enough for it to allow it to transfer protein within the brain across the blood-brain barrier. So it's because it's involved in that, it can help in treatments of things like, as you say, things like Alzheimer's, but also in treatment of strokes. You need just the right amount so that it can act in that way. Too much and it's ineffective. Too little and it's not going to do anything. So very important, very important. Choline deficiency is apparently something we need to watch out for. Who knew?
Absolutely. Now, the scientists say that choline is a wonder nutrient, but is often been hugely overlooked. Well, in fact, according to Jinying Jiang, who's the professor of health and nutrient science at Brooklyn College in New York, United States, every
Yeah.
cell in our body actually contains choline. And what he's gone on to say is that choline is an essential nutrient, which means we need it for our health, but our bodies don't produce enough of it on its own. So although our cells do
Yes.
produce it, that's one of the reasons now we can get this by basically through our diet. And in this sense,
Yeah.
it's similar to
Sure.
omega-3 fatty acids, although it's actually closely associated
Yeah.
with vitamin Bs. But it's interesting how science is really making progress on this. Now, choline can be found in animal-based foods,
Yeah.
so it can be found in beef, eggs, fish, chicken, and
Yes.
milk. But it can also be found in peanuts, kidney beans, mushrooms, and many other
Yes.
vegetables, such as broccoli.
It's interesting, isn't it? If you were having a balanced diet, using the word balance again, but in this case, what they mean is all the different food groups
Yes.
included, and then variety within that. So if you have a varied, balanced diet, you're more than likely going to have everything that you need.
Yes.
But it's good. It's good that these things are pointed out. We can watch out to make sure people eat enough eggs, for example, as would help in this case. But really, when it comes, I think I can take the Mark and Peter line on this and say, when it comes to choosing a diet, it's best to go for that sort of thing. A little bit of everything is good. When you cut out whole food groups, vegans, anyone,
Mm.
you end up being quite unhealthy.
Quite. Now, I have a
And in
balanced
this
diet.
case, quite stupid. But I mean, I wouldn't, of course, say that about
Well, I
vegans.
do have a balanced diet. I tend to balance the knife and the fork with as much food as possible, and it seems to
Yes,
work.
yes. All that it certainly shows.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Ballast. That's what I'm going for. Well, here we go. Our third subject. And this is quite an intriguing one, but it's one that surfaced again, and it's about naming and shaming. If you are named and shamed, where accusations are aimed, and your guilt is proclaimed, and your reputation is defamed, but the evidence you disclaim means that anger is inflamed, then overall, you should be ashamed. Yes, Sir
Yes.
Philip Green. Well, complaints about him, which was raised by Parliament in relation to misconduct allegations, according to a court, has been rejected. Well, now the former top shop boss launched a case after a Labour peer said in the House of Lords that the tycoon had used a court order to stop the Telegraph publishing a story about the allegations. Well, Mr. Pete, I ask you, first of all, do you think that Parliament should be able to name and shame? And do you think that perhaps full evidence should be kept disclosed until the court cases are resolved? What's your thoughts about naming and shaming in Parliament?
Well, this is where this is, I think, essential. That they are able to name and shame.
Well, they are now.
Parliament. Well, yeah. Well, the thing is, they are, and it's sometimes said by people, we're a free country, we have free speech. Well, legally, the only place where you actually have free speech, similar to the United States of America, where they have they have a free speech enshrined in the in their constitution. We have free speech in Parliament. and people can say whatever they want. So I think you should be able to name and shame, and I think that needs to continue. As soon as you start to take away free speech, then you limit what you can do. You limit the power of Parliament, and you need to have that in place. Because just think what sort of abuses could occur if you were not able, if certain powerful people were not named and shamed, perhaps
Yeah.
even more powerful than Philip Green. And so I think that it is essential. Now, I think that it's unwise to reveal details when the court case is going on. But I still think you need the first thing is in Parliament, you are allowed to say whatever you like. I think that's essential.
Well, it is. Now I'm going to sort of play again the other side. The lawyers for the businessman challenged the absence of controls on the power of parliamentary privilege to reveal information
Yeah.
covered by an injunction. But recently, and this is quite remarkable, a panel of 8 judges ruled against Sir Philip, finding his right to privacy under Article 8 on the Convention had not been violated. Now, the point being is
Yes.
the majority of the judges also found that his complaints brought under Article 6, the right to a fair hearing, and Article 13, the right to an effective remedy, were inadmissible. So the justices said that national parliaments are better placed than the international judge to assess the need to restrict conduct as a member. What I find interesting about this case is rights, and this right to anonymity when an accusation is made, I can see is being very important because you don't want trial by media, you don't want your case prejudiced. And so this is an interesting one, isn't it? Because he's a high profile person. We know there's been lots of controversy over some of his business transactions. The fact that, the way he sold British Home Stores, the way that some of the pension saga unfolded, and what this particular one is about is really his conduct. What I'm curious about though is why this is sort of inflamed in the media in this way, when it's still not entirely clear to me, is he guilty? And that's the point, you know.
Yes, I know. Yes, it's not clear at all. But
Yeah.
yes, the thing is, yes, why is the media so interested? What is there something more going on behind the scenes? At this
Yes.
stage, we can't know that. I think that's what you're pointing at. But it's still important. It's still essential that MPs can say whatever they want. I think if we start to impinge on that, then then it takes away the power of Parliament, as I say, which would upset the important balance that we have of powers in this country. Uh, of course, it's not advisable to release details. It's not advisable to prejudice a case, and but I just think that to coin a phrase, the parliamentary privilege trumps that,
Yes.
because it's just so important.
Well, it is. And look, we've covered a number of subjects. There's lots more this week, but we would love to hear from our listeners. And with that as a thought, I'm going to get my quota of choline, I think, just to sort of prepare myself for next week's chaotic
Yes, I'm going
news.
to have a stiff draft of it myself for next time. But make sure, gentle listener, that you are subscribed. Go to markandpete.com. Make sure that both that you're signed up and that you've remembered to follow us, and then you can leave a comment on this and indeed on every episode, as some people like to do. But yes, do that, and we'll be sure to include your comments in future comment-focused episodes. But that's it from Mark and myself for this week. Thanks very much for listening. Catch you next time.